have Stephanie Jackson. Thank you, Gabby. And first we'll have Henry Owings and Stephanie Jackson, and then we have Aaron Paul in this session. So Henry and Stephanie, whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully my Canva presentation is gonna share correctly. Hopefully you guys can see that, see my Ain't We Lucky We Got 'Em.
Yep.
So good morning. I'm Stephanie Jackson with the Chunklet Music Preservation Project. My husband, Henry Owings, is here on this call. Henry, say good morning.
Hello.
So we are here to talk about our good times in preservation. Ain't we lucky we got them? What an adventure we have had. So the Chunklet Music Preservation Project is a 501c3. We're a nonprofit here in Atlanta. Our mission is to collect and preserve music and music-related ephemera for future scholarship and enjoyment. That is our official stated mission. And we were founded in 2022. Henry is creative director and president. I am executive director and secretary treasurer. Claire Butler who is here in Atlanta, is our third board member. And we are a completely volunteer organization. So in 2019, in September of 2019, Henry and I met unexpectedly on this dating app, Hinge. I liked his picture. He said hello. When I asked what he did for a living, he said, I'm a graphic designer, an author, a magazine publisher, concert promoter, record producer, recovering tour manager, and stand-up comedian. And I thought, this guy is full of it. And then I Googled him and I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be really interesting. And here we are 6 years later. So the reality was Henry's career in the music business had started more than 30 years before, and beginning with his time at WVYC 88.1 at York College in Pennsylvania in the late 80s. And he was booking shows and promoting shows in that area. And then he was working under this Chunklet moniker, including the Chunklet magazine, the Chunklet Industries, freelance graphic design, all kinds of stuff. And you can read about that on screen, and you can certainly reach out to us for more information. Google Chunklet and Henry Owings, and you'll find more information than you probably want to know. But he has done a remarkable amount of work. I am a paralegal by trade. And when Henry and I met, I was working for the Georgia Attorney General, and eventually I transitioned full-time into paralegal education with the technical college system. But I am a professional researcher, right? Like I am trained to find what doesn't want to be found. I train other people to find what doesn't want to be found. And in a previous life, I was a writer with articles published on Huffington Post, divorcemoms.com, mariashriver.com. So we have some experience, but we are not trained archivists. But in May of 21, Henry got the idea to paper the walls of a local rock club with flyers for rock shows that had happened in Athens and Atlanta. And from that came this idea to publish a book or two of these flyers. And he wanted to self-publish these books in full color, keep the holes, torn edges, all the stuff that made the flyers look like these ephemeral pieces had just come off the walls right after shows, right? People had just taken them off the walls. And so we put out this call on social media for materials to scan for the books. And he'd either give them back when he was done, or he'd help them find a forever home at some archive. And he was already doing that with his own Chunklet archive, helping to migrate that to special collections at UGA. Shout out to Jeanette Morgan, who I know is on this call from Special Collections today, who is a vital part of the work that we do. She's been a huge help for the several years we've been doing this. But he also helped to archive the Elephant Six Recording Company archives to special collections. So he'd been working with Hargrit for a little while and getting this work accomplished. So he was not brand new to it. But he asked me if I'd help track down details of club addresses and dates and years for the show. And he wrote some essays for them for the Athens book. He had Vanessa Hay from Pylon, Michael Lahusky from Pylon, Arthur Johnson from the Barbecue Killers, Patterson Hood from the Drive-By Truckers, Dave Schools from Widespread Panic, also write essays for the Athens book to intermingle with these essays when we did the Plus One Athens. So by the end of 21, we'd published Plus One Athens with these flyers from 67 to 2002. By the end of 22, we'd added the Atlanta book with flyers from 1962 to 2003. We had essays from David Cross, Jared Swilley of the Black Lips, Bill Kelleher from Mastodon, and we'd also come up with a Plus Two Athens with a follow-up book for what was going on. And we were starting to get some press about the work that we were doing. And as word spread about what we were doing, people started requests that we came to their cities to scan, usually at record stores. So to date, a little over 4 years since we started, we've digitized almost 28,000 unique artifacts across the Southeast, Pennsylvania, DC, Maryland, Illinois, and the United Kingdom. And so not only do Henry and I have this great joy of these road trips together, right, to scan this material, we get to see old friends, we get to make new friends when we are traveling around the country. And as we'll show you, we've been shushed in research libraries across the state. We have been shushed in so many libraries. Proudly shushed in so many libraries for getting excited about what we find, but it's because we find some really remarkable pieces of history. And I'm sure so many of you can understand where that excitement comes from. So when we got married in September of 23, we asked friends and family to donate for our nonprofit, for the Chunklet Music Preservation Project. And so for our honeymoon, we took a research trip to the UK, and we spent 13 days scanning materials across England and at Spiller's Records in Cardiff, Wales. Spiller's is the oldest record store in the world. It's been in continuous operation since 1894. We came home with 400 digitized pieces from the UK and some physical pieces. One of those that we digitized, you'll see a picture of Henry here. This is one of 3 known existing, one of the extant posters of REM's first show in Wales in 1984. One is at Spiller's, one is in the REM archive, and one, a guy bought at a charity shop for 99 cents. He just happened to pick it up one random afternoon. And then in late 2023, we did a whole wall installation at Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. There were 350 flyers from Athens, Georgia, dating back to the WSB Barn Dance in 1947. And that was a huge, like in the North Terminal, just upstairs from Southwest Ticketing, that was up for several months.
It was 2 years.
2 years, yes. And so we have recovered unreleased recordings of the Lost Athens art rock band Limbo District. They were contemporaries with REM, the B-52's Pylon. We've released records of their material. We've re-released other materials. We've worked with the Brown Media Archives at UGA to restore Professor Emeritus Jim Herbert's 1983 film Carnival of Limbo District, which was a photo shoot. The film was actually of a photo shoot of Limbo District by Atlanta photographer Marlis Lenz Cox, whose work we now represent. We've been covered by NPR, by WABE locally, and last year we were covered in The Guardian for the work that we're doing with Limbo District and recovering this stuff. And this year we took a week-long trip to the Carolinas, Virginia, and Pennsylvania to scan materials on our way to special collections at the Fales Library at NYU. And while we were there, we were able to recover material that had been lost for more than 40 years. This was the materials of Gordon Stevenson, who was from Dublin, Georgia. He's a New York-based artist, but he died in 1983 of what would become known as AIDS. His brother Davey was a member of Limbo District as well. And so this stuff has been lost for 40 years, and there's a significant amount of mail art. If anybody knows anything about the mail art movement of the 1970s, there's a huge amount that's here that's never been seen, that's in this collection. And then we have just re-released comics done by the illustrator Jack Logan that are lampooning REM guitarist Peter Buck. Jack gave us permission to re-release these as a fundraiser for the nonprofit. And so much of what we do is bringing this old material into public view again, and let's give it new life. Like this was ephemera that was going to be lost otherwise. So much of what we do is just having fun together, right? Henry and I get to hang out with our very favorite person. We get to see really cool stuff. We get to meet a lot of really wonderful, wonderful people. If we have a song, it's the theme to the 70s show Good Times. Like it's been that way for our entire relationship. And we, ain't we lucky we got them? I mean, that really is where we are in our life as a whole. And we are extraordinarily fortunate to do the work that we do. So thank you to SGA for having us today. Thank you guys for listening. If you have any questions, I mean, we're happy to answer anything, but you're also welcome to reach out to us at henry@chunklet.com and stephanie@chunklet.com. We're on Instagram at the Chunklet Project as well.
Mic drop. Boom.
Any questions? Oh, did I lose my? Here we go. Yeah, I'll stop my sharing. There we go. Okay. Thank you.
That's a great project. There's actually one in Birmingham that started pretty recently, focused on Birmingham Music Archive or on the Birmingham Music Archive that I'm
Yeah,
connected with right now.
I've been working on a Birmingham book, and I've been working with them quite closely. I think one thing that I've really enjoyed about this is like we're completely self-taught, and I love the idea of making information that largely is remanded to that of academics, and let the people have control of it. And the Birmingham stuff, it's like Georgia is just where we are, but it's like I love working with like Lee Shook, like Bergen, like all it's like we all get along really great. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's fine. All right. So thank you all for being here early in the morning. Today I'm going to be talking about the importance of contemporary collecting, especially in kind of the digital realm. So my name is Aaron Paul. I'm the digital curation librarian at the University of Alabama at Birmingham. I joined UAB in 2023, and I mostly focus on managing our digital collections, acquiring new materials, and ensuring public access. Before UAB, I worked as a digital archivist at a history museum in Florida, where I also did a lot of outreach and contemporary collecting with a focus on digital content and local community documentation and underrepresented communities. So first, I'm going to go over some recent major losses to digital content, just a couple, and showing how that's happening. And then I'll walk through some contemporary collecting and why it's essential in today's digital landscape, and close it out with some practical strategies for outreach, education, and building stronger donor relations around digital content. So as people in this field, this may not be news to anyone, but last year, the MTV News website and archives was shut down and deleted pretty much overnight. There was no warning, no preservation plan. It was just gone. Around that same time, Comedy Central's website went through essentially the same process, and decades of content was lost overnight. This is not a new problem. We've seen it happening pretty much since the beginning of collecting, and it's been a part of new technology again, from the beginning. Early days of radio, TV, podcasting are all mostly gone and have been lost. So content being vulnerable is nothing new. And a lot of times people don't see its value until it's too late. The thing that has changed is how quickly content is disappearing. Today, websites, podcasts, digital projects that are less than a year old can already be gone. And deleted due to storage limits, expired domains, or organizational shifts. And as more and more of our lives are stored in cloud accounts, smartphones, hard drives, digital media, the risk of that digital loss is only going to continue to grow. And so those were a couple of kind of big, national, global examples, but this is also happening in a much smaller scope and within our collecting scopes, and potentially within our own institutions. So this is an example. This is a page from UAB School of Dentistry. It was launched to commemorate the school's history. It's been out for less than a year, but UAB is in the process of overhauling its entire website across the campus, and this page will almost certainly not survive that migration process. And we've seen this happen before. The university's 50th anniversary page was taken down just a couple years after it went up, with no plan to archive or preserve it. Fortunately, we were able to do that essentially the week before it went down, which was a lucky break for us. But this content is disappearing. And with it, kind of times are changing. If we want to avoid having a massive gap in our historical record, we have to adapt to how people store and share information today. Our archives are full of scrapbooks, letters, journals, photographs, and even legacy media. But most of those mediums have all been replaced by digital equivalents like email, text, social media, and cloud storage. Unfortunately, the likelihood of someone voluntarily donating those digital equivalents is much lower than their physical equivalents. Think about it, when someone moves to a new house or a new apartment or a family member passes away, it was easy in the past that they find a box of old material, documents, photos, journals, and not really want to take it on to the next stage in their life's journey, but it would also feel wrong to just throw it away, given that it was, told the story of someone's life. And so a lot of times that content would end up in an archive. Fortunately, there's really no equivalent moment for digital content. Cloud accounts are easy to move, deleting content can take a single click, and devices get wiped or passwords get forgotten. Even if a family member knows about someone's different digital accounts, they may not have access to those accounts, or they may feel overwhelmed trying to sort through someone's entire digital life, especially when they're concerned about privacy issues, financial information, or personal information. And on top of all that, people simply don't think that digital content, especially their digital content, is worth preserving. They assume archives don't want recent or everyday content. And because of that, taking an active role in collecting digital content is no longer optional. It is essential to what we do. Some collecting targets are really obvious. I think probably everyone here realized when COVID-19 started that it was going to be a historically significant event, being a global pandemic. And because of that, decided to collect and document that event within our scopes. So a lot of places started creating collections around it. And in some cases, it was their first digital collection because that is what a lot of the content related to COVID-19 was. But for the most part, it's a lot harder to tell what is going to be historically significant in 5, 10, 50 years. And so it can be hard to know what to collect. We can help with that process by looking at our existing collections, our scopes, and looking at what our users are interested in and viewing. And so UAB's collecting scope is pretty clear and really narrow. It's really just UAB history and medical history. But when I worked at a history museum in Central Florida, our collecting scope was anything related to Central Florida history, which is a very broad topic with a large geographical area. And because of that, it was really difficult to know where to focus my very limited time and resources. And so one of the ways I kind of alleviated that was looking at what our patrons and researchers were actually requesting access to from our collections. One of the most common requests we got was for photos and documents related to their houses, streets, neighborhoods, because people wanted to see what their homes looked like, 30, 40, 50 years ago, and how they changed over time. So instead of waiting decades and hoping that someone would donate 2020's era neighborhood photos at some point in the future, I took an active approach and reached out to kind of local amateur photographers who were already going out and taking photos in these neighborhoods. And when I contacted them, a number of them were really happy and kind of flattered that we were interested in their work and willing to donate. The worst thing someone can say to you is that they're not interested in donating or just not respond at all. But if they do say they're not interested, they at least knew that your institution was interested and hopefully had a good experience in that process. And so maybe, 5 years, 10 years down the road, when they're ready to donate, they'll remember that you were interested and come back to you at that later time. Or, again, if they had a good experience, they'll talk to their friends, colleagues, and recommend your institution. And so a no is not necessarily a failure. One of the major advantages that we have when it comes to digital content is that donors don't have to part with anything they own. They can keep copies of everything. And that makes the donation process accessible to a much wider range of people, regardless of their financial status. It also helps us build more representative, inclusive collections that reflect a fuller diversity of our communities. We're not just relying on wealthy donors with the time and resources and ability to donate. We can open it up to a much wider audience. So one of the biggest barriers that I've encountered is simply convincing people that we do actually want their content and we're interested in hearing their stories. Once they kind of get over that realization, they're much more willing and open to sharing their work with us. They're also a lot more willing to tell other people what we're doing, what projects we're working on, and encourage them to also contribute. In this process, always ask if they have anything else they're interested in donating, because a lot of times they do. And a number of times I've had a lot of occasions where they've donated other material that I didn't know they had that was more impactful and more relevant to our collecting scope than what I had initially reached out for. Outreach isn't as difficult as it can sometimes sound, especially if you know what you're looking for and have a target. Finding those first few people can be a little bit tricky, but once you build up those connections and start building a network of support, one donor can often lead to others. And along with all of that, it also builds up a stronger community of support for your institution because people are more invested in what you're doing if they're a part of it. But with that, I'm out of time. So I think I got it a little bit, like 4 or 5 minutes for questions if there are any.
All right, thank you, Aaron. So if we have any questions or thoughts to discuss with either of our presenters, now is the time. Stephanie and Henry, I definitely found your presentation very interesting because I also work with music collections and I'm like, that's so cool.
Thank you. It's really fun. Like it's really because neither of us work in archival space and like that's not where we came from. It gives us a completely different perspective on how we contextualize what it is that we're doing. Like I could write a dissertation at this point and how music promotion changed as technology changed over the last 100 years. Like because Henry comes from a place of music promotion. And it's been like there's a whole like look up Cobbler's Frolic. UGA Special Collections has a broadside for Cobbler's Frolic, which was an event in Atlanta during the Civil War. A fascinating piece, and UGA has one of 3 extant pieces in the world.
That's really cool. I see we have a hand raised. Hannah, did you want to ask a question?
Hi. I don't really have any questions, but this is for Henry and Stephanie. I have to say I'm such a fangirl of your project. My dad went to UGA during that cool town era mid 70s. He took classes with folks from Pylon. I'm a huge fan of Elephant Six, and
Right.
I just really love that your project is bringing to light what like I consider my own cultural heritage and contributing that to the historical record. And I just think it's really cool. I guess my only question would be, can I come intern with you in perpetuity?
Please, please, we are always looking for there's and Edie made the comment in the chat that there are other projects like the 309 Punk Project and the Southern Punk Archive, And absolutely, and while we don't necessarily call ourselves punk, and Henry, there's a whole thing, Henry did a whole interview about that recently. There is so much other music. Yes, there's so much work to be done. You all know this. And one of the things we have found is all of these small libraries we've been into, small places we have been into, historical societies, genealogical societies, they have resources they literally can't catalog and digitize because they don't have enough people to do it, right? And they need volunteers just to go in 10 hours a month to scan and photograph what they have on site. So you want to come in and help us scan and catalog stuff? Please, let's have a conversation. Like, reach out to us anytime. There's so much work to be done around the Southeast and around the country and anywhere. And we would love anybody who wants to come in. Let's find a way to jump in. We are all volunteer in what we do.
We have a couple questions for Aaron in the chat.
So I was going to answer Dean's first because it's a little bit quicker. So we typically didn't have too much of a problem with getting rights agreements. We typically use a deed of gift and a non-exclusive license agreement, letting the owner of the photos retain copyright and just giving us a kind of additional rights to use it in a kind of a variety of ways, research purposes, display purposes, store a copy, and, provide access to interested parties. But that depended on what type of photographer they were. If they were a professional photographer, it is a completely different agreement because that is an income source for them, and we want to be respectful of that. And so usually we would work out options for like viewing, but not use. Use would go through the photographer. For amateur photographers that were just, interested in going out, taking photos, but weren't really making any money off of it or saw it as an income stream, we'd usually do just kind of a full non-exclusive license agreement. But it depended on what they were interested in, and we'd work with them to figure out what was the best fit for their situation. For Lori's question, I think it's a lot harder in a digital space. If one thing is to look at kind of digital equivalents of physical items in an archive. So if you do write a journal, if you are a photographer, if you email's a little bit harder, but if you're doing kind of those same things that you see in physical archives, trying to preserve those, one of the options is, and this is not a bad option just in general, but having a backup in case you do pass away or something happens where someone else does know your account information or can get your account information so that everything's not lost. Having a plan of, I have a Flickr account where I store all my photos, and just having kind of a list of those places, those accounts, so somebody knows and someone knows what's going on. Also, don't wait until the last minute to donate. Donate sooner so that, again, you're not risking its loss as much. If you know something's important or if you think it's important, share it with the people that can properly preserve it and store it sooner the better. But it can definitely be hard when you're looking at your own stuff. I know I am a terrible example of what I'm preaching. So, yeah.
I think all of us can relate to that. Do we have any other questions, comments, or anything for our two first presenters of the day?
I have a quick question for Stephanie and Henry. Just out of curiosity, what is the lore behind the name Chunklet?
Golly. So I moved to Georgia in 1991 and was not a writer, was, just a term paper guy, and, but wrote a lot of letters. But when I moved to Athens, I started writing for the alt weekly in town called The Flagpole. it's a long story. It's one I'm happy to bore you with, though. And so I started writing for the flagpole, and through that, I was getting frustrated with how my writing was being edited. Destroyed would be a better word for it, but just edited. So I started my own publication, and I was looking for a name. And as was often the case on weekends in Athens, I went out to a creek out on the west side of town. And when I was coming back, I have a bit of a soda addiction. And so we stopped at a rural convenience store. And the convenience store was nondescript, rundown, as you would imagine in West Athens in the early 90s. And I went in, got a cup of ice, and I'm looking at the machine, and it just has emblazoned on it Chunklet. And I was like, oh, that's a good word. And so I get my soda, and I would have not remembered the ice machine if it weren't for the fact that when I went up to the cash register, the gentleman who was checking me out was leaning back on the cash register. His hand was being trimmed by his daughter, and his foot was being trimmed nails by his wife. And I was brand new to Georgia, and I was like, this is some redneck bullshit. And so I remember when I went back out to my car, Chunklet just stood in my mind. And when I started a publication, the name just kind of it said everything that I wanted to say, which was nothing really, but also it was small, and and that's how it came about. That's how Chunklet came about.
That is great. Thank you so much.
Now it's not like it's not nearly as compact as you would hope. So
No, but that's a fun story. It sounds very redneck. Yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that tracks. So let's take a very brief, like 2-minute stretch break, and then we'll be right back here with session 2. Very excited.
Thank you, guys.